Have you ever noticed that there are some albums that you used to love when you were younger, but for some reason you lost interest in the band, but then you listen to it after many years and you think to yourself, that was awesome. Well, this is how I felt about the band Slaughter and their debut album, Stick It To Ya. So if you didn't know, or if you're new to my channel, I like to do retro reviews whenever there's a significant anniversary. And now it's 2025. I made a list for January, and I saw that Stick It To Ya by Slaughter was celebrating its 35th anniversary on January 23rd. I thought to myself, I haven't heard that album in a long time. I guess I must have been 18 years old when it came out. I used to listen to it all the time. Then I thought, I haven't really heard much about this band in a while. I started to wonder why they didn't reach the heights of bands like Motley Crue or Bon Jovi. So then I thought, was the band Slaughter too late to the party? Today I want to talk about the band Slaughter and their album Stick It To Ya, which was released on January 23rd, 1990. It's celebrating 35 years. So in this video, I want to talk about the history of the band and then get into more detail with their debut album Stick It To Ya. Then I want to explore why they didn't blow up like many other bands at that time, and then I want to see where are they now. Let me start with some background on the band. The band was formed in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1988. They were formed by vocalist Mark Slaughter and bassist Dana Strum, who were in a band called the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. Here's some trivia with the bassist Dana Strum. I recently did a video on Ozzy Osbourne, and I mentioned that Dana Strum was the person who introduced both Jakey Lee and Randy Rhoads to Ozzy Osbourne. So there's some cool trivia, but let me backtrack a little, because I want to talk about the Vinnie Vincent Invasion and how their history is tied into this one. If you didn't know, Vinnie Vincent was in the band Kiss for a while, but then he formed his own band. They released 2 albums. Supposedly there's a third one in the works. But the first Vinnie Vincent album had a vocalist whose name was Robert Fleischman. He previously sang on the band Journey. But they had some problems. Robert left the band. They found Mark Slaughter, who actually appears in one of the music videos for the first album, and he sang on the second album, All Systems Go, which came out in 1988. That album had a few minor hits, but the band was dropped by the record company Chrysalis, and Dana Strum got fired, and Mark Slaughter left with him, and they formed their own band, Slaughter. The band basically stole the contract that Vinnie Vincent Invasion had with Chrysalis Records, given that Vinnie Vincent Invasion exceeded their credit line with the label. Now it's time for them to complete the lineup. They recruited guitarist Tim Kelly and drummer Blas Elias. After that, they released their debut studio album, Stick It To Ya. This album was pretty successful. It sold over 2 million copies and was one of the biggest albums of 1990. There were 3 singles. They all charted in the top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100, and their music videos were in constant rotation on different music channels such as MTV and a few others. The singles were Up All Night, Fly to the Angels, and Spend My Life. I'll be talking about them in more detail in a minute. There was another song called Mad About You that received some airplay and album rock stations as well. The album was also nominated for Best Metal Album of the Year of the 1991 American Music Awards show, and received a pretty positive critical reception. I want to talk about some of the singles and the music videos, and then I'll talk about the album tracks. The first single was Up All Night, which was released on April 17, 1990. They had a music video which was actually directed by Michael Bay. The video was also considered to be one of the 15 essential hair metal videos according to the New York Times. This was one of those videos that had high production value, showed the band playing live. It was intercut with typical scenes from hair metal videos, like women dancing in the rain. It also showed the woman with her dress blowing in the wind. I guess they got some ideas from that Whitesnake video with Tony Katane. But it's a great song. It's a hard rocker. It has a heavier sound, maybe similar to some other bands of the 80s, such as Dokken. The next single was Fly to the Angels. This was released on July 14, 1990. This was their obligatory power ballad. Needless to say, it was their highest charting single, which peaked at number 19 on the US Billboard Hot 100. This one had one of those typical music videos from the 80s, which starts with the band getting ready to play a concert. It's filmed in black and white. Then it goes into a typical performance video where they're playing some type of airport hangar. And throughout the song, they show B-roll of a woman. I guess it's his love interest. But the song is actually kind of sad. It's inspired by a true story when Mark Slaughter found out his girlfriend died while he was on tour, so the song is dedicated to her. The video also shows airplanes, which are symbolic to her flying to the angels. The next single was Spend My Life. This one has a video, shows the band at a radio station. They pop in the CD. It's their second power ballad, although it didn't chart as high as Fly to the Angels. The music video is a performance-based music video. This was one of those songs that I know I've heard many times, but it wasn't as memorable as the first two singles, but I know I've listened to it many times over the years. The next thing was called Mad About You. This one had a typical music video, showed scenes from a strip club, and the rest of it was a live performance. The song was a harder rocker, maybe reminiscent of a Motley Crue type of song. This one has the melodic hair metal guitar riffs and the late 80s rock and roll party all that time energy. As for the rest of the album, it sounded very representative of the hair metal albums from the time period. There was a combination of hard rockers, semi-ballads, and ballads. I heard a lot of influence from bands like Van Halen and Motley Crue, and a few other songs which didn't really fall into the hair metal category. I think one of the big influences was Van Halen. I noticed the opening track called Eye to Eye. I noticed a lot of guitar playing was influenced by Eddie Van Halen. I also heard in the second track, Burning Bridges, other than the guitar work, I noticed Mark Slaughter does a lot of this David Lee Roth style banter where he's either talking directly to someone or talking directly to you. I heard a lot of that on the song Burning Bridges and another song, She Wants More, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Another band I thought they reminded me of a lot was Motley Crue from the late 80s. I think they were going for that LA Sunset Strip attitude with a few songs. This was most noticeable in the aforementioned Burning Bridges and She Wants More, which is about a woman who likes to spend your money on just anything. Basically she was a gold digger. And then there's another song called Loaded Gun, which was a very crude sounding song with the aforementioned banter. But not everything followed that typical hair metal formula. There were some standouts. For example, there's a short instrumental called Thinking of June, which had acoustic guitars and showed off some of the band's classical music training. There was a song called That's Not Enough, which reminded me of some AC/DC. There was another ballad called You Are the One, which probably could have been one of the singles and gave me some of those White Snake vibes. And another song that was kind of like a semi-ballad called Gave Me Your Heart. I thought it was an arena rock type of song, and they weren't trying to stick to that typical hair metal formula. That one probably could have been a single. Then another semi-ballad called Desperately, which I thought was a pretty good song. Now you may be wondering whatever happened to this band. They were pretty big around this time. In addition to this album, they had a song that was on the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey soundtrack that was called Shout It Out. And they had a music video for that and all. That was kind of a big song. A lot of bands had singles on movie soundtracks around that time. But they released a follow-up album in 1992 called The Wildlife. It sold pretty well, but unfortunately, by 1992, hair metal was dying out thanks to grunge, so the album didn't have any top 40 hits. They intended to release another album in 1994, but they had a series of setbacks. The first one was guitarist Tim Kelly, who was arrested for drug trafficking. But to make things worse, bass player Dana Strum had a motorcycle accident. He injured one of his hands and that delayed the album. They released one single called Searchin', but then they were dropped from their label EMI when they merged with Chrysalis. So they signed with CMC International and they released an album in 1985 called Fear No Evil. That album didn't do as well as the previous one, and they had to get a substitute guitarist for a few shows, given the legal problems of Tim Kelly. But eventually Tim Kelly resolved his legal problems, and they released Revolution in 1997. But then tragedy struck again. Tim Kelly was killed in an auto accident. He was eventually replaced by Jeff Blando. Then they released Back to Reality in 1999. That was their official last studio album, although they continued to play live shows over the years. Now you may be wondering, what is the band doing now? They're still together. They're currently working on a documentary that has long been in the works. Let me first read a quote from Mark Slaughter. We are embarking on this topic, and it's hard to herd cats. This is like herding cats, making this all work. But we're getting there, and we're on our way with that. But basically, this is going to be part biopic and part documentary. So it's going to try and find some actors who look like members of the band, and it's going to be interwoven with real footage and clips. I don't really have much information. That's why I have this bad AI art on the screen. But As far as I know, the movie's not finished yet, and I'm not really sure when it will be released, so if anyone knows, let us know in the comments. I recently made another video where I mentioned Dana Strum and his ties to Ozzy Osbourne, so if you want to check that out, I'll stick that right here. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you have not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.